with the first one, we brought something really new to the cinema, I think, and something kind of original and fresh and quite shocking in moments, and I think we've taken that potential and pushed it another notch higher. Chris and Chloe have a very dynamic and very different journey to the first, which I think are fantastic and brilliant, and I love that. But yet Dave is still trying to discover himself. So it's trying to make that person the person that we left off knowing, and you know, and growing into a man. He needs to take on some responsibility for his actions. Actually, you know, the consequences, you know, weigh heavy on his shoulders this time, and he really understands that. You're surrounded by people that are just happy to be here. That's the great thing about doing the sequel too. That the people who love the first one have all kind of stepped forward to kind of be a part of it, you know, like Kerry and John Leguizamo and Don Faison, people like you kind of just go, oh great, you know. I remember the first day we sat down together and first met each other, and I got along with him really well, and we just chatted about the character, you know, and he was just really sincere and passionate about it, and I'm really interested in making Dave's journey. You know, it wasn't just about how much action we can get in it and whatnot, and you know, all behind the stunts and the fighting, there's always a motive and an emotion, and which I love too.
It's just broader, you know, this movie's it's just broader, it's a bit bigger, it's mainstream, you know, it kind of makes, it allows you that if you didn't see the first one, you can come back into this movie and know exactly what's going on because we catch you up. And it just kind of, there's more explosions, there's just more stuff going on. Mindy McCready is a young girl who you first meet her in the first movie when she's 11 years old, and she has her dad, who's played by Nick Cage, and basically you realize that she's been raised as a vigilante her entire life and really knows no different, and killing is like a comic book, and it's a game for her. And then she loses her dad in the first film, and then you come back into the second film meeting her 4 years later when she's, you know, 16, well, 5 years later when she's 16 years old, and she's basically figuring out her life, and now she got adopted by her dad's best friend, who's now a cop. She realizes that she is a vigilante, and she just wants to bring justice into the world, and so she just can't watch bad people walk through her life. So she basically gives justice to the girls and you know, rights the wrongs. And she realizes that she's not a killer. She doesn't do it for fun. She does it because she really does want the world to be a better place. The battle between Mother Russia and I is very, very intense. And it took, God, like 2 weeks to film, and it was insane. Mindy looks at it as real life. She looks at it as real death, because what she's doing is you know, she knows how to kill people. She's not playing around when she arrests people. She kills them. So with Dave, he just goes and beats people up and like, it's like, oh, I'm gonna show you a lesson, whereas Mindy really does enforce things.
I've always loved the idea of putting Mindy into high school and saying this is her new challenge of how does a person who can slaughter a room of drug dealers with her finger suddenly not deal with horrible, you know, mean girl types and have crushes and rejection and all that stuff, and she's had no training for it. So I thought that was interesting to take her out of her comfort zone, put her into what is a normal circumstance, which has become very unnormal with her. He goes to Mindy and says, look, train me up, I want to do this properly, and you and I can be the new dynamic duo and go off to the races. And then his arc is then, just as he's getting good and they're enjoying it, she then has to give up to become she makes a promise that she won't do it anymore, and then he's left on his own devices, and then he's scared to do it on his own, so then he teams up with a whole bunch of the wannabe superheroes, and probably 8 wannabe superheroes are still not replacing one little hit girl. And then at the end of the movie, he goes on the journey and he realizes he doesn't need hit girl, he can do it himself. Red Mist he's the dweeby guy that wanted to be the superhero, sort of the failed son of a extremely aggressive, scary drug lord. And he's now decides he'll be the world's first supervillain.
The first movie was about a guy deciding to become a superhero and influencing other people to do the same. So the second movie really sort of takes that and runs with it, and you have a guy influencing all these people into becoming something close to a cult or a movement or whatever, you know, and they form this gang, Justice Forever. So it takes something that was a singular in the first movie and makes it into something bigger and exciting. It's that sense of escalation you should always get in a film with a sequel. And then at the same time, you have Chris Mintz-Platz's character deciding to have the opposite journey. You know, he kind of is like Dave in the first movie, but goes the other way. He decides to become a bad guy. And that's quite exciting to kind of explore that too. To actually go out and commit the first super crime is quite a cool thing. Like, nobody even now has ever done this, like dress up and go out and actually do something. So Chris does this. It actually was amazing that we found someone who was physically very intimidating, very charismatic, but also really agile and could fight too. And I've been watching her fight training. I've been watching all this digitally streamed, and I'm amazed. I mean, the stunt teams have been working with her, and the stuff looks phenomenal. We haven't shot a lot of that stuff yet, but I can't wait to see it. You know, every day she just seems to get a little bit more dangerous. At the beginning of this movie, you know, Hit Girl is pretending to be a schoolgirl but secretly going out at night and taking out bad guys. Red Mist is becoming the world's first supervillain, and Kick-Ass has got his team together. So it's quite exciting. It feels bigger than the first movie, and I think a sequel should always feel bigger.
I play the character of Marcus, who is who's Mindy's guardian. Mindy's father, played by Nick Cage in the original, he passed away, got killed, and now she needs a guardian. So Nick Cage's character was like a brother to me. So he told, you know, he wrote a letter to Mindy, if anything ever happens to me, you listen to this man, he will take care of you, and that's what I'm here for. There's a very complex relationship between Marcus and Mindy because Marcus is, you know, he's a single guy who doesn't have any kids. And then all of a sudden, his best friend dies, and he's, you know, he's now forced to help raise a teenage girl. So it's a very complex relationship because, you know, she's not the normal child. She's not a normal teenager. Chloe's been great. She's, I think she's a very, very talented young actress, and just her grasp on the role. Obviously, she played in the original, so she knows exactly where she is. With this one, it's just been great working with her.
One thing this movie has going for it is you have all the origins kind of out of the way. You know, you're sort of just immediately getting into like, you know, like the second act of something. You know, so it's way more exciting just by virtue of that it is a lot more action. And, like, the scope and the scale of the movie are so much bigger, both in terms of, you know, the numbers of superheroes you have in the movie and the size of the action. Marty's not that aggressive. Marty doesn't have a reason to be a superhero. You know what I mean? That's sort of his problem, is, like, Dave is doing it, I mean, at first out of some weird, like, hole in his life, but then towards the end out of like revenge, you know, and he's got like a mission. Marty really doesn't have any trauma in his life. Like, his parents apparently have money and like are still together, and you know, he's got like a good life waiting on him. The Shield was really good for physical comedy in general because it immediately, just the nature of it's a shield, you know, it's defensive, so it kind of like immediately to me made the character seem like he was never on offense. It was always defensive. Like, that was just the nature of, like, he's got a shield. He doesn't have, like, a stick to accompany it. He's just got the shield. So I was always kind of, like, physically hiding behind it or trying to use it with that in mind. I feel like it kind of informed the way I played the costume stuff in a weird way. Donald's character is pretty hilarious just because he's so enthusiastic to be a superhero. Like, he's just clearly having the time of his life doing it, which I think a lot of that stems from Donald himself was really excited to get a costume like me. It was like a dream come true for him to be in like a superhero movie.
Being a superhero is a little different from being a vigilante. A vigilante is somebody who just goes out there and tries to stop crime on his own or her own. being a superhero, being a hero, there's way more involved. Is way more involved, I should say. You know, it's putting clothes on people's backs who don't have clothes. It's feeding people who are hungry. It's you can be a hero by giving someone your shoes. You know, you can be a hero by helping someone build a house, or we see examples of it every day, and that's what the Colonel's trying to tell these people. It's not just about stopping crime. It's also about helping those in need. And yeah, that is a great message. If anything, that's what people should get out of this. You don't have to be this ultimate badass killer to help your community. You can help your community just by giving back to it. Dr. Gravity does bring Kick-Ass he brings Kick-Ass to Justice Forever. And they wanted Kick-Ass because that legitimizes them. That makes them legit. We have a true bona fide superhero, somebody who's actually gone out and not just stopped petty crime, but has stopped a mob boss from taking over the city. And we got him. He's down with us now. And so now Justice Forever, people look at Justice Forever and it looks like it's a real group of superheroes or vigilantes band together to stop crime. When there's a director that's like that, when there's a director that's passionate as he is, it makes you want to work just as hard, And so I feel like he's getting great performances out of everybody. And I think everybody also, we were all really big fans of the movie, including Jeff Wadlow. We were all really big fans of Kick-Ass 1. And so, like, I'm having a surreal moment now. It's like, wow, yeah, I'm on the set of Kick-Ass 2. This is awesome because I was such a huge fan of the first one.
I love the first Kick-Ass film, and I saw it purely as a fan. It's actually sort of a surreal experience making this movie because I'm making the movie with the cast from the first film, the crew from the first film, in the same country that they shot the first film, with a lot of similar elements and locations. And really the only thing new about it is me. And so having seen the first film purely as a fan and then dropped in the middle of this sequel is mind-blowing. I wanted to make the movie, and so I wrote it to make it. And my big idea from the beginning, I think, was just this notion that Dave and Mindy and Chris still didn't know who they really were yet. That in the first film, they created these alter egos. They had these alter egos, Kick-Ass, Hit Girl, Red Mist, but they still hadn't answered that larger question, that question that we all ask ourselves, who am I really? And what's my place in this world, and what am I going to do with my life? And it's one thing to try to be someone else, to be a superhero, but who am I in my core, right? Dave really starts feeling like a superhero when he's hanging out with superheroes. And obviously there's 3 characters in the mix that really personify that sense of belonging. There, of course, the Colonel, who's a real father figure for him. There's Dr. Gravity, who becomes like a new best bud. And there's Night Bitch, played by Lindy, who's basically his new girlfriend, his new romantic interest. And I think, you get to see Dave enjoying being a part of this group through those 3 relationships.
I play Night Bitch, also known as Miranda Swedlow, in Kick-Ass 2, and she's one of the members of Justice Forever. She has a really sad story. Her sister has been killed and found in a dumpster, and I think when something terrible happens to a person, you have 2 options. You either succumb to it and you let it ruin your life and you drown in it, or you try to do something positive with it. And I think that's what Night Bitch has really become for her. It's a positive way for her to deal with tragedy and loss by fighting back and fighting for the little guy and fighting for victims and standing up and not becoming a victim herself. One of the sort of the overriding themes with Justice Forever is that real-world superheroes sometimes, you know, can't do all the jumping off buildings and they're not trained ninja fighter people, but the way they can help is by helping those less fortunate than themselves. To me, Aaron is the movie. I mean, he is so incredibly talented and so committed to the part. The amount of work that boy can do with this much of his face showing is incredible. It's amazing to watch as an actor because everything's been taken away. His whole face has been taken away from him except his eyes and his lips, and his ability to tell a story and to communicate with just that area is incredible to watch. And he's so invested and so clearly loves the world and loves the character. It's amazing to work with him, and it's very easy to let Night Bitch fall in love with him because he's adorable.
What Chris's character has decided in the movie is that he's going to give up Red Mist, trying to become a hero, and he's going to forsake all that to revenge his father and become the motherfucker and get kick-ass. That's his whole MO, modus operandi. Chris is one of those special actors. You know, the amount of natural vulnerability that this kid has, no fear of being awkward, no fear of embarrassment. I mean, you gotta love that. I mean, I love actors like that who bring that sort of, I'm okay being weak, I'm okay being, you know, a loser, whatever. You know, he just brings all this vulnerability, and so you love this guy. I just had a really interesting time with Jeff, the director, and Chris, really creating a real backstory for my character, for Javier, and the real purpose of having him in the movie, you know, and it was to create this sort of surrogate father for Chris, and for there to be some sort of, you know, he's the teenager with the angst and rebelling, the rebellious teenager, to his surrogate dad. So we wanted to create all those relationships that happen in real life, even though it's a comic book, even though, you know, I'm the bodyguard. So we try to add a lot of depth to that relationship. The beauty of the first one was the way they captured the innocence of these teenagers and how awkward they were in facing the real harsh, cruel, violent world out there. And I just thought that was so, you'd never seen that in a comic book before.
So it was good to come back in a new world. You know, my father's passed away. My mom is a pill-popping psycho. And obviously you can tell, like, I'm now, you know, I've turned to the dark side, and all I want to do is get kick-ass. So it's it's good to be back in the world, but it's, you know, 3 years later, it's something completely new. Olga was incredible in this. You see her, and she's just muscular and ripped and intimidating, but then you have a conversation with her, and she's just like the sweetest woman you could ever meet. Every morning she's giving you kisses, greeting you. I don't know if Jeff told you the story, but she had one scene where she was destroying cop cars and shooting people in just like intense moment, and Jeff yelled his, you know, cut, and ran over to Olga and was like, Olga, that was amazing, that was fantastic, and she just gave a little curtsy and was like, thank you. Like, this badass woman just gives this little 12-year-old girl moment, and you're like, that's Olga in a nutshell. She like looks this way, but she's honestly just like a sweet human being in the heart. The Evil Lair is beautiful. I feel like I didn't get enough time to really soak it in, because once we got in there, it was just 50 supervillains and 50 superheroes and all these cameramen and Jeff screaming, and it was like so much going on that it was really a lot to kind of take in how beautiful it was. So in this one, I think you can expect from start to finish just a lot of intensity, humor, violence, blood and gore, and you don't have to worry about setting any characters or anything. It's gonna be a fun ride.